The first time Emily laughed in our new backyard, I knew we had made the right decision. Sunlight filtered through the oak trees, casting dappled shadows across her adaptive swing set. At 12 years old, her cerebral palsy had never dimmed her bright spirit. Her wheelchair sat empty nearby as she enjoyed the freedom of her specially designed outdoor equipment. Her brown curls bounced with each movement, her smile wide enough to make the years of saving for this home worthwhile. Our move to Oak Ridge Estates represented a fresh start for both of us. After losing my husband to cancer 3 years prior, we needed change. The neighborhood appeared perfect on paper: modern homes with spacious yards, streets wide enough for Emily's wheelchair to navigate comfortably, a community pool with an accessible entrance. The sales brochure promised an inclusive community where families could thrive. The HOA guidelines seemed reasonable during our initial review. Rules about trash can placement, lawn maintenance schedules, and exterior paint colors. Standard provisions designed to maintain property values and neighborhood harmony. I signed the covenant agreement without hesitation, believing these structures would protect our investment while building community. Our first week brought welcome baskets and friendly introductions from most neighbors. The Ramirez family across the street invited us for dinner. The elderly couple next door offered gardening tips. Even the neighborhood teens helped unload Emily's medical equipment with genuine curiosity about her adaptive devices. For the first time since becoming a widow, I felt the warm embrace of community support. Then came Veronica Winters. She appeared at our door exactly 2 weeks after move-in. Clipboard in hand, pearls gleaming at her neck, blonde bob cut with mathematical precision. Her smile remained fixed as she introduced herself as the HOA president. "Just doing my welcome rounds," she explained, eyes scanning our porch ramp. "I notice you have made some exterior modifications without prior approval." I explained that the ramp was essential for Emily, offering to provide medical documentation. Veronica nodded, making notes on her clipboard. "We will need that filed with the architectural committee," she said, gaze drifting to the adaptive equipment visible in our backyard, "along with permits for those structures." Her tone remained pleasant, but something in her eyes when they landed on Emily watching from inside made my stomach clench. I dismissed the feeling as new homeowner anxiety. Within days, I had submitted all required documentation and received provisional approval for our accessibility modifications. I converted our side yard into a therapeutic garden space for Emily, with raised beds she could tend from her wheelchair and sensory elements recommended by her occupational therapist. The area quickly became her sanctuary. For a few golden weeks, life felt normal. Emily began virtual schooling while making weekend friends with neighborhood children. I worked from home as a graphic designer, grateful for the quiet cul-de-sac location. We established routines, planted flowers, and hung wind chimes that made Emily smile each morning. Looking back, I should have recognized the warning signs. Veronica frequently walked past our house, sometimes stopping to photograph our yard modifications. Her tight smiles when encountering Emily in her wheelchair. The whispered conversations with other board members that ceased when I approached at the community mailbox. Those first peaceful months were merely the calm before a storm that would test not just my patience, but my ability to protect my daughter from unimaginable cruelty. I could not have known then that beneath Veronica's designer outfits and perfect smile lurked someone who would target my disabled child with such calculated precision. The first violation notice arrived exactly 30 days after our move-in date. The crisp white envelope bore the Oak Ridge Estates logo in the corner, its official appearance belying the absurdity within. Our wheelchair ramp exceeded the approved width by half an inch according to their measurements. They demanded immediate modification or daily fines would accrue. I remeasured the ramp 3 times, confirming it matched the exact specifications in our approved plans. Nevertheless, I scheduled another assessment with our contractor, who verified the measurements were correct within standard construction tolerances. I submitted his professional statement along with photographs and detailed measurements. The second notice arrived before we even received a response to our appeal. This one cited our sensory garden beds as unsightly structures that violated aesthetic guidelines. The third notice followed a week later, claiming Emily's adaptive swing created visual pollution visible from the street, though it was clearly situated behind our privacy fence. The pattern became impossible to ignore. Each complaint specifically targeted accommodations essential for Emily's independence and therapy needs. I began documenting everything meticulously, filling 3-ring binders with photographs, correspondence, and timestamped notes of every interaction. My kitchen table disappeared beneath expanding files of evidence. The quarterly HOA meeting fell on a Tuesday evening in early autumn. The community room filled with homeowners, most of whom I recognized only vaguely from dog walks or mail collection. Emily had developed a cold, so our teenage neighbor stayed with her while I attended alone. My heart pounded as I waited for the open forum portion, rehearsed statement clutched in my trembling hands. The floor is now open for community concerns, Veronica announced after an hour of budget discussions and landscaping reports. I stood, voice wavering slightly. I would like to address the pattern of violation notices targeting accessibility accommodations for my disabled daughter. The room fell silent. I presented our case methodically, explaining each accommodation's medical necessity and our prior approvals. I distributed a 1-page summary of the Americans with Disabilities Act requirements for reasonable accommodations, which I had researched extensively. Veronica sat enthroned at the head table, arms crossed, eyes unblinking throughout my presentation. When I finished, she leaned forward into her microphone. "Rules are rules," she announced to the room, voice clipped and final. "Allowing exceptions creates precedent. Your daughter's condition does not entitle you to special treatment that diminishes neighborhood aesthetics for everyone else." Blood rushed to my face as several board members nodded in agreement. One woman in the back called out, "Hear, hear," while others studied their shoes, avoiding eye contact entirely. "Medical necessity is not special treatment," I countered, fighting to keep my voice steady. "It is a legal right." "This meeting follows Robert's Rules of Order," Veronica responded coldly. "You have exceeded your allotted speaking time. Next concern, please." The division spread through the neighborhood visibly after that meeting. Some neighbors left supportive notes in our mailbox or offered to help document future incidents. Others crossed the street to avoid conversation. The Petersons, who had previously invited Emily to their daughter's birthday party, suddenly became too busy for playdates. I pursued every proper channel methodically. I filed formal complaints with the HOA Appeals Committee. I submitted accommodation requests with supporting medical documentation from Emily's doctors. I consulted with a disability rights advocate who sent an informational letter about legal requirements for reasonable accommodations. Each effort met bureaucratic resistance or outright rejection. Weeks of certified letters, emails, and phone calls produced no results beyond mounting frustration. Meanwhile, violation notices continued arriving with alarming frequency. The most heartbreaking change occurred in Emily herself. My once confident, outgoing daughter grew quieter, hesitant to venture outside. She began checking the window before wheeling out to her garden, scanning for Veronica or other board members. Her therapy sessions in the garden shortened, her enthusiasm diminished. One morning, I found her staring out her bedroom window instead of getting ready for virtual school. "Can we move somewhere else, Mom?" she asked, voice small. "Mrs. Winters does not like us." I knelt beside her wheelchair, throat tight with emotion. "This is our home, sweetheart. We belong here just as much as anyone." But as I held her, I felt something fundamental shifting in our lives. The injustice burned like acid in my chest, eroding my faith in community and fairness. What began as neighborhood politics had transformed into something darker, something that threatened the safety and well-being of my disabled child, and I was running out of proper channels to fight it. The unseasonably warm Saturday in late October seemed perfect for a day trip to the adaptive recreational park in the next county. Emily had grown increasingly reluctant to use her outdoor space at home, the shadow of neighborhood conflict stealing her joy. We needed respite from the tension that had become our daily reality. "Can we visit the sensory trail with the waterfall?" Emily asked over breakfast, the first genuine excitement in her voice in weeks. I packed her adaptive equipment, medication, and enough snacks for a full day of exploration. The park offered specialized recreation facilities designed specifically for children with mobility challenges. For 7 wonderful hours, we existed in a world where accessibility was the norm rather than a battleground. Emily blossomed in that environment. She navigated the wheelchair-accessible treehouse with newfound confidence. She laughed with other disabled children in the sensory garden. Her face glowed as she successfully completed the adaptive rock climbing wall with minimal assistance. For those precious hours, she was simply a child enjoying life rather than the center of a neighborhood dispute. "This was the best day," she declared, as we reluctantly headed toward the parking lot at closing time. "I wish our neighborhood had a park like this." The sunset painted the sky in amber hues as we turned onto our street. Emily chattered about her favorite activities, planning which ones we should try first on our next visit. I half listened, distracted by an unusual sight ahead. Our gate stood partially open, which was not how we had left it. "Wait here a moment," I told Emily, slowing the car as we approached our driveway. A glint of metal caught the fading light. My stomach dropped as I registered what I was seeing. Someone had installed a heavy chain and padlock on the gate leading to Emily's therapeutic garden space. The specialized equipment visible beyond the fence appeared disturbed, some items clearly missing. Emily spotted it before I could shield her. "Mom, why is there a chain on my garden?" Disbelief turned to horror as Veronica emerged from behind her curtains across the street, as if she had been waiting for our return. She crossed the street with purposeful strides, clipboard in hand. I stepped out of the car, placing myself between her and Emily's window. "What is the meaning of this? You have no right to touch our property." "That entire area violates sections 3, 7, and 12 of the covenant," she recited, tapping her pen against the clipboard. "The board voted emergency action during your absence. You chain my disabled daughter's therapeutic space." My voice rose with incredulity. "That equipment was prescribed by her medical team." "Unauthorized structures remain unauthorized regardless of purpose," Veronica stated flatly. "The items removed are being held pending proper applications and variance approvals." Emily had wheeled herself from the car, confusion and distress evident on her face as she approached the fence. "My gardening tools," she cried, spotting them just beyond reach. Before I could stop her, she reached through the chain-link fence toward her adaptive trowel. The heavy chain caught her arm awkwardly as she extended it through the narrow opening. Her cry of pain shattered the evening quiet. I rushed to her side as she pulled back, the metal links scraping against her skin. Blood trickled from where the chain had cut into her arm, her face contorted in pain and confusion. "She is bleeding," I shouted at Veronica, who remained unmoved. "Unlock this immediately." "Property violations require proper channels for resolution," Veronica continued, actually taking notes as my daughter sobbed. "Forms are available on the community website." Through my tears of rage, I caught sight of Mrs. Ramirez from across the street, phone raised, recording everything. Several other neighbors had emerged from their homes, watching the scene unfold with expressions ranging from shock to grim satisfaction. I wrapped my jacket around Emily's bleeding arm, whispering reassurances while fumbling for my phone to call for help. Emily buried her face against my shoulder, her body shaking with sobs. "That hurts, Mom," she whimpered. "Why would she lock my garden? I did not do anything wrong." The absolute cruelty of the situation crystallized in that moment. This was not about property values or covenant compliance. This was targeted harassment of a disabled child by someone wielding institutional power like a weapon. The chain dangled from our fence like a proclamation of cruelty, its message unmistakable. "Get off my property now," I told Veronica, my voice dangerously quiet. "And if you ever come near my daughter again, I will pursue every legal remedy available." Veronica merely raised an eyebrow. "Threatening a board officer constitutes a separate violation. That will be noted in your file." She turned and walked away, leaving us with the locked gate, a bleeding child, and a gathering crowd of neighbors. Some approached offering help, while others retreated into their homes, blinds quickly drawn. I carried Emily inside, her arm still bleeding, her questions impossible to answer. How do you explain such deliberate cruelty to a child? How do you justify hatred masked as rule enforcement? As I cleaned and bandaged her wound, my hands shook with a combination of rage and helplessness. The physical injury would heal relatively quickly, but I recognized the deeper trauma forming in her eyes. The trust broken, the security shattered, the innocence lost to the knowledge that sometimes people hurt others simply because they can. That night, after Emily finally fell into restless sleep, I sat beside her bed and made a silent promise. This would not stand. Whatever it took, whatever resources I needed to find, I would protect my daughter and hold accountable those who had caused her harm. The rules had changed today. Veronica Winters had no idea what she had just unleashed. The bruise on Emily's arm evolved like a macabre time-lapse photograph. Angry purple gave way to deep blue, then sickly yellow-green edges appeared as days passed. Though the physical wound began healing, the emotional damage cut deeper. Emily refused to go near the windows facing our backyard. Nightmares disrupted her sleep 3 nights that first week, each time waking with the same panicked cry about being trapped. Her occupational therapist noted significant regression during their telehealth session. "This traumatic experience has created a setback in her progress," she explained gently. "She associates her adaptive equipment with pain and fear now instead of independence." I sought legal advice immediately, meeting with 3 different attorneys specializing in disability rights and property law. Each consultation yielded the same discouraging assessment. The HOA bylaws provided extensive protections for the board. The mandatory arbitration clause and litigation limitations would make any legal challenge costly, lengthy, and uncertain. "HOAs operate like private governments with extraordinary power," explained the third lawyer, closing my file with a sympathetic sigh. "The case could drag on for years, and meanwhile, the fines would continue accumulating. While legal options stalled, the video Mrs. Ramirez captured spread through community Facebook groups and neighborhood text chains. The footage showed Veronica standing impassively as my child bled, her clipboard held like a shield against basic human compassion. The neighborhood divided further. Anonymous supportive notes appeared in our mailbox. "We are with you," one read. "This has gone too far," stated another. A local disability advocacy group reached out offering support, yet other neighbors grew hostile, crossing the street to avoid conversation, or worse, stopping to photograph alleged violations on our property with theatrical diligence. The HOA machine mobilized with frightening efficiency. Daily notices arrived demanding compliance, threatening fines that accumulated faster than we could appeal them. The chain remained on the garden gate, with a second official notice attached warning against tampering with board-sanctioned enforcement measures. Veronica walked by our house multiple times daily, often pausing to make notes or take photographs. She recruited other board members to join her surveillance rotation, creating an atmosphere of constant monitoring. One afternoon, I counted 7 different people photographing our home within a 2-hour period. A certified letter arrived containing notice of a lien being placed against our property for unpaid violation fees. The bottom line showed an amount that made my stomach lurch. At this rate, we would face foreclosure proceedings within months. Emily grew increasingly withdrawn. Her virtual school teacher called concerned about her participation and focus. Her physical therapist noted increased muscle tightness from anxiety. The vibrant, resilient child who had never let cerebral palsy define her boundaries now jumped at unexpected sounds and spoke in whispers even inside our home. "Are they going to take our house away, Mom?" she asked one evening, her voice small in the darkness of her bedroom. "No, sweetheart," I assured her, though uncertainty gnawed at my confidence. "I will not let that happen." But the pressure mounted relentlessly. My graphic design work suffered as I diverted time and energy to fighting the HOA. Sleep became elusive, replaced by late nights researching legal precedents and disability accommodation laws. The mounting stress manifested physically in tension headaches and a persistent knot in my shoulders. After a particularly difficult therapy session where Emily refused to practice her mobility exercises, claiming, "There is no point anymore," something inside me broke. The constant battle was crushing us both. We were drowning in bureaucratic quicksand while my daughter's hard-won progress and confidence eroded daily. That night, after Emily finally fell asleep clutching her therapy bear, I collapsed at the kitchen table. Defeated tears flowed freely as I stared at the stacks of violation notices, legal consultations, and medical reports documenting my daughter's regression. The mountain of paperwork represented weeks of fighting through proper channels with nothing to show but mounting fines and a traumatized child. My hand shook as I scrolled through my phone contacts, stopping at Michael Williams. We had been close friends in college, though life had taken us in different directions after graduation. Our connection had dwindled to occasional holiday cards and social media updates. His last Christmas card mentioned his promotion within the FBI's cybercrime division, accompanied by a family photo. With his wife and twins. The clock read 11:47 p.m. Too late to call anyone, much less someone I had not spoken to in years. What would I even say? Remember me from Sociology 301. My disabled daughter was chained to a fence by our HOA president. Can you help? My finger hovered over his name. This was desperate, pathetic even. Michael worked in cybercrime, not neighborhood disputes. He had his own family, his own problems. Our friendship belonged to another lifetime. But the image of my daughter chained to our fence flashed before my eyes again. Her blood on the metal links, her confusion and pain. The memory steeled my resolve as I pressed call, half expecting voicemail at this hour. He answered on the third ring. "Sarah, is that you? Is everything okay?" The concern in his voice after all these years broke whatever composure I had left. "Michael, I am so sorry to call so late. I would not if it were not important. I need help. My daughter needs help. I do not know who else to turn to." And then, starting with the chain on the garden gate, I told him everything. Michael arrived 3 days later looking every bit the federal agent I had imagined. Crisp button-down shirt with subtle tie. Observant eyes that scanned everything while appearing casual. He embraced me briefly before kneeling to introduce himself to Emily, speaking to her directly rather than around her as many adults did. "I brought something that might help," he told her, producing a small leather wallet. "This is what we call a junior agent badge, only for people I can really trust." Emily accepted the replica badge with solemn appreciation, the first genuine smile I had seen in weeks brightening her face. Michael spent time chatting with her about her interests before I took her to her scheduled teletherapy session in her bedroom. When I returned to the kitchen, his expression had shifted to professional concern. "Let me be clear about something," he said, accepting the coffee I offered. "This is not officially FBI jurisdiction. HOA disputes, even discriminatory ones, typically fall under civil rather than federal law." My heart sank. "I understand. I should not have bothered you." "I did not say I cannot help," he corrected gently. "What happened to Emily crosses several legal and ethical lines, and there are channels worth exploring." Michael spent hours reviewing my documentation. He examined photographs of Emily's injuries, studied the violation notices, and paged through the HOA bylaws with meticulous attention. He asked precise questions about timelines, specific wording used by board members, and patterns of enforcement against other residents. "You have done impressive groundwork," he noted, organizing my chaotic papers into specific categories. "But we need more. Broader patterns, financial records, evidence of selective enforcement." Before leaving, he placed a discreet voice recorder and small notebook on the table. "Document everything. Dates, times, specific language used. Record conversations when legally appropriate in public spaces. Note who else receives violations and for what." The investigation began modestly. I followed Michael's guidance, creating detailed records of every interaction while continuing to pursue official appeals through HOA channels. I researched property records to identify other homeowners who had moved away after short ownership periods. What began as simple evidence gathering transformed into an alarming mosaic of corruption. I connected with the elderly widow on Sycamore Drive who had lost her home after impossible fines for her oxygen equipment that the board deemed industrial equipment prohibited in residential areas. I located the Vietnamese family who had faced constant citations for cultural decorations until they finally moved away, selling their home at a significant loss. A sympathetic former board member who had resigned in protest provided key information. Over coffee at a cafe 20 miles away, she slipped me a flash drive. "I always kept copies," she whispered. "Something felt wrong about the selective enforcement and cash flow." The spreadsheets revealed disturbing patterns. HOA funds diverted to shell companies. Selective enforcement generating revenue through targeted harassment. Properties facing severe violations mysteriously purchased by the same investment group shortly after foreclosure, then quickly resold at market rates. Michael checked in regularly, reviewing my findings and providing guidance on documenting evidence properly. "This is becoming something bigger than harassment," he observed during one of our secure calls. "Keep digging, but be careful. Money trails like this often connect to dangerous people." Late one night, rifling through archived HOA newsletters, I discovered a critical connection. A holiday photo from 3 years earlier showed Veronica's son receiving an academic award. The article mentioned his subsequent rejection from an elite college preparatory academy, despite his mother's prominent alumni status. The piece quoted Veronica blaming administrative bias against learning differences for the rejection. It mentioned her son's diagnosed dyslexia and the school's refusal to provide extensive accommodations she had demanded. The school principal's name caught my attention immediately. Elizabeth Carson, my second cousin, whose family resemblance in our holiday photo on social media was unmistakable. Further research confirmed my suspicion. Elizabeth had denied special accommodations that Veronica had demanded for her son, resulting in his academic struggles and ultimate rejection. The connection clarified everything. The personal vendetta against us had nothing to do with property values or aesthetic concerns. Veronica had recognized my relation to Elizabeth from social media and targeted my disabled daughter in retribution. The cruel symmetry made my blood run cold. I documented the connection carefully, adding it to the growing evidence file. 3 weeks into our investigation, neighbors began reporting unusual activities at Veronica's home. Late-night visitors, documents being removed in boxes, computer equipment suddenly replaced. Michael appeared at my door unannounced one evening, his expression grave. Emily had already gone to bed, allowing us to speak freely in the kitchen. "This goes beyond harassment," he said quietly, placing a file on the table between us. "We found connections to mortgage fraud, insurance scams, and identity theft using HOA records, multiple federal violations across state lines, and Veronica is at the center of it all." He explained that my evidence had provided enough suspicious activity for him to request official involvement from appropriate departments. The Financial Crimes Unit had uncovered a sophisticated operation using HOA data to target vulnerable residents, particularly elderly homeowners and those with medical needs or disabilities. The board has been accessing personal financial information, medical records, and identity documents through your HOA management portal, he explained. That crosses into federal jurisdiction. The investigation had expanded beyond anything I had imagined. What began as a neighbor's cruelty toward my disabled daughter had unraveled a criminal enterprise operating under the guise of community governance. "What happens now?" I asked, overwhelmed by the scope of the discovery. "Now we build an airtight case," Michael replied, his expression determined. "And we need to move carefully. People who commit financial crimes at this level do not surrender easily when exposed." As he outlined next steps, I felt a complex mix of vindication and fear. The situation had grown beyond our personal struggle into something with far-reaching implications for the entire community. Justice suddenly seemed possible, but the path to it had become more dangerous than I had anticipated. My dining room transformed into command central over the following week. Laptops, documents, and determined faces gathered around the table daily as our plan took shape. Michael brought in a colleague specializing in financial crimes, while Mrs. Ramirez recruited other victimized residents willing to provide testimony. "The goal is not revenge," Michael reminded us during a strategy session. "It is justice and systemic change. We need to approach this methodically to ensure accountability. Our planning required absolute secrecy. We communicated through secure channels, careful to maintain normal routines that would not alert Veronica or other board members to our investigation. I continued attending HOA meetings, submitting appeals, and documenting violations while gathering evidence. The case against Veronica and her collaborators grew stronger daily. Financial records revealed systematic fraud spanning years. HOA dues had funded personal expenses, including Veronica's vacation property in Florida. Identity information from homeowner records had been used to create fraudulent credit accounts. Most disturbing were the targeted patterns against vulnerable residents whose properties were later acquired through foreclosure by shell companies connected to board members. After weeks of preparation, we finalized our approach. Michael secured necessary law enforcement cooperation while our civilian team organized community evidence. The trap was set through an innocuous channel, a notice for an emergency budget meeting to discuss critical financial discrepancies, requiring immediate homeowner attention. The evening of the confrontation arrived with tense anticipation. Emily insisted on attending despite my concerns. "I need to see it," she explained with wisdom beyond her years, "to know she cannot hurt us anymore." The conference room at the community center filled beyond capacity. Current residents mingled with former homeowners who had been driven out by selective enforcement. Representatives from the district attorney's office and federal agencies positioned themselves discreetly among the crowd, identifiable only to our core team. Veronica arrived last, customary clipboard in hand. Her confident stride faltered momentarily as she registered the unexpected turnout, quickly recovering as she took her position at the head table with other board members. "This emergency session of the Oak Ridge Estates Homeowners Association will come to order," she announced with practiced authority. "We have a single agenda item regarding budget allocations requiring immediate vote." The projector hummed to life as I rose from my seat, Emily beside me in her wheelchair. My stomach knotted with nervous energy as dozens of eyes turned toward us. "Before we address budgetary concerns," I stated clearly, "the homeowners wish to present evidence of financial irregularities and discriminatory practices requiring immediate attention." For one dangerous moment, seeing Veronica's smug expression, I considered revealing her most personal secrets discovered during our investigation. Her underwater mortgage hidden from other board members, her son's legal troubles related to prescription fraud, the vindictive motivation behind her targeting of my daughter. But Emily's presence beside me grounded me in something better than vengeance. This was about justice, not retaliation, about systemic change, not personal satisfaction. The following presentation documents systematic financial fraud, discriminatory enforcement patterns, and federal violations committed under current board leadership. I continued professionally. The evidence has been provided to appropriate authorities for investigation. Michael stepped forward, identifying himself officially. Federal investigation has confirmed misappropriation of HOA funds exceeding $1.4 million. Additionally, we have documented evidence of wire fraud, identity theft, and civil rights violations. The presentation proceeded methodically through financial records, documented discrimination patterns, and federal statutes violated. Testimony from former residents established patterns of targeted harassment against vulnerable homeowners. Medical documentation confirmed harm caused to multiple disabled residents, including Emily. Color drained from Veronica's face as the evidence mounted. She lunged for her laptop, knocking over water glasses as panic replaced composure. "This is defamation," she shouted, voice rising to a desperate pitch. "I have explanations for everything. These are complex financial matters that laypeople cannot possibly understand." Her protests died as two uniformed officers entered through the side door, their presence confirmation that this night would end very differently than she had anticipated. "Veronica Winters," announced the lead officer, "you are under arrest for wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit mortgage fraud." Other board members began distancing themselves immediately, some attempting to leave before additional officers appeared, blocking exits. As Veronica was led away, still protesting her innocence, Emily reached for my hand. "Is it over now?" she asked quietly. "The worst part is," I assured her, watching as years of injustice finally faced consequences. "Now we rebuild." The meeting transformed into an impromptu community forum as shell-shocked residents processed the revelations. People who had avoided each other for months now compared stories, recognizing the patterns of manipulation that had divided neighbors against each other. As we prepared to leave, several residents approached Emily, offering genuine apologies for their silence during her mistreatment. The healing had only just begun, but the chains of fear that had bound our community were finally broken. Snow dusted the courtyard outside the federal building 6 months later. Emily and I watched from the public gallery as Veronica and 3 board members received their sentences. The financial crimes carried far heavier penalties than their harassment ever could. 15 years for Veronica, with substantial sentences for her accomplices. The defendants abused positions of trust to target vulnerable homeowners for personal gain, the judge stated during sentencing. Their actions caused not merely financial harm, but profound emotional damage to families and individuals who should have been protected by the very systems these defendants corrupted. The transition team, appointed to manage our HOA dissolution, discovered over 30 families harmed by discriminatory practices. Some had lost homes through fraudulent foreclosures. Others had been driven away by targeted harassment. Many cases involved disabled residents, elderly homeowners, or families with medical needs. Restitution began with policy changes, then extended to financial compensation from recovered funds. Homes taken through fraudulent means were returned to original owners where possible, with financial settlements arranged for others. The criminal enterprise had been more extensive than anyone imagined, with connections to similar schemes in other planned communities across 3 states. Emily watched from our front porch when workers arrived to remove the remaining chain links from her garden gate. The court had ordered complete restoration of her therapeutic space, with damages covering enhanced accessibility features recommended by her medical team. "They cannot hurt anyone else now, right, Mom?" she asked as the last chain link fell to the ground. "Not anymore, sweetheart," I assured her, marveling at her capacity for healing despite everything she had endured. Her therapist noted significant progress in the months following Veronica's arrest. As neighborhood children returned to play in our yard, Emily gradually reclaimed her confidence. The garden space that had been weaponized against her became a symbol of resilience as she planted new flowers with determined hands. Spring brought unexpected community transformation. The former Oak Ridge estates reorganized under resident management with comprehensive anti-discrimination policies. Emily was appointed honorary chairperson for the new Accessible Design Committee, her insights guiding playground renovations and community space improvements. Martha Jenkins from 2 doors down, once Veronica's steadfast supporter, approached us during a community cleanup day. Tears filled her eyes as she knelt beside Emily's wheelchair. "I was afraid of becoming a target myself," she confessed, helping Emily plant sunrise gladiolus bulbs in the community garden. "I knew what was happening was wrong, but I remained silent. I am so sorry." Her honesty reflected a broader healing spreading through our neighborhood. People who had avoided each other now worked together to rebuild trust. Former adversaries found common ground in creating truly inclusive community standards. On warm evenings, our street filled with neighbors sharing meals at connected tables stretching down the sidewalk. Children played across formerly rigid property boundaries, while adults forged new connections based on mutual respect rather than fear. Michael visited occasionally, always bringing Emily a new adaptive gardening tool. During his last visit, he watched her demonstrate her latest planting technique to attentive neighborhood children. "You know," he reflected quietly, "in my line of work, we often see the worst of human behavior. But sometimes, like today, we get to witness the best too." Watching Emily confidently instructing her friends, I realized how far we had come. Justice had arrived not through matching cruelty with cruelty, but through methodical exposure of truth. The system had worked, not perfectly or quickly, but thoroughly enough to protect those most vulnerable. Emily no longer checked the window before venturing outside. Her laughter carried freely across the garden that had once been chained against her. The neighborhood children now included her naturally in their games, adapting activities to ensure her participation. Sometimes the greatest revenge is simply reclaiming joy in places where others tried to chain it down. As Emily planted seeds for next season's flowers, I recognized the most